Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the DELO. I am your host, the DELO, and I was just informed we're in, I think it's episode 90, so it's pretty cool. I've been doing this for 3 years now. No, maybe, 3 years. It's exciting. So, Brian, welcome to 90.
Good morning. I love it.
Good morning, my friend. How was your trip? You just got back from LA, right? Burbank?
I did. Yeah, I had a meeting with the CEO for our sales and marketing team. So it was great.
Sales and marketing for what? Tell people what you do and who you are.
So my name is Brian Pierce. I've got a pretty extensive, crazy background in hospitality.
Let's start with salt. We'll get into the rest of the shit later.
So True Salt is a sea salt company, and we import sea salt from Mexico, and we sell it to hotels and restaurants. And our partner for sales and marketing is a 68-year-old company. They reached out to us. They've got 13 products, and one of them is True Salt. So
it's pretty cool.
There's a lot of, they essentially sell to distributors. 2,300 distributors, which equates to about 1 million accounts.
So was that basically when you got a deal like that? Was it that just kind of like, wow, this is it? There's so many things. There's so many things. I mean, I've owned different companies and restaurants, and they're all a journey. There's so many positives, but there's so many failures. What was the beginning to this journey? What started this? I know we'll talk about your restaurant background in a little bit, but what started the True Salt journey? Like, why salt? Who does that? Yeah, so I have this saying that preparation meets opportunity. So I was consulting when I left the hotel hospitality business. I was consulting for multiple different companies. One of the groups was down in Mexico. For about 2 years, I worked with this wellness group, and they would fly me down to all different parts of Mexico. And it's a long story, so I'll shorten it. One of the real estate guys in the office had an opportunity for a franchise for a burger concept. Asked me if I'd wanted to open a burger concept in Mexico, and I said, "Do you guys eat burgers here?" And he starts pulling up his photos of In-N-Out and how it's a cult, and they bring it in cold and share it with all their friends. So I thought, okay, you guys like burgers and tacos. So I said, well, let's meet with the guys. They were based out of Pasadena, California, and they have these concepts all throughout different parts of the world except for the U.S. And I said, well, so if we're going to take Mexico, can we expand that and do a master franchise for all of Mexico? So we met with the group, and they said, yeah. And I said, well, if we do Mexico, why can't we do Latin America? So we secured it, tied it up. And as soon as we closed the deal, my new friend's like, okay, great, where are we going to open a unit? And I said, we're not. We're going to flip this. We're going to sell it to a big group and let them do it. At the closing dinner, I don't drink, and everyone's just kind of, in Mexico, when you have any sort of celebration, there's multiple people involved. So the guy sitting next to me is like, hey, gringo, why are you eating so fast? And I said, you guys drink, I'm just hanging out. I said, the food in Mexico, we're in Mexico City. I said, the food down here is amazing. I said, my discovery of food and what it really was all about in Mexico was enlightening to me. And he said, well, it's because we don't season our food with a chemical. And I said, what are you talking about? He's like, the salt you guys use in the U.S. is bleach. It's got stuff in it besides salt or sodium chloride. And ours doesn't. We use a lot of sea salt. So we had this conversation, and it went on. And I said, how do you know so much about sea salt? He's like, well, my family has a salinera. I'm like, what is that? So he told me it's the building on the Sea of Cortez that processes sea salt. And I said, okay. So now I'm just infatuated, right? Because I'm sober, and he's drinking, and I'm just like, how much salt do you have, and what do you guys do with it? And he's all like, millions of cubic tons. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but this is interesting. I said, because we only, in my head, I was like, I came home from this meeting, and I thought, man, why do we only use Morton's, the blue box? So it kind of set me on this path of, understanding what salt was and what is kosher salt. I had no idea, right? And I've been in the hotel restaurant business my whole career. So, and then, there's more, I met Kelly Egan, my business partner. He was a marketing guy, and, I approached him and I said, hey, I've got this idea about salt. And he's like, are you crazy?
And I said, yeah, let me just tell you. And he's like, no, that's really, either it's really crazy or really stupid, but he's like, I'm in. Let's do it.
So you just kind of start this brand called True Salt. He puts like the marketing together with it, start your LLC, and then you go back down to Mexico and start transporting salt over?
Yeah, roughly. Kelly's brilliant marketing. I mean, he was on a Disney trip with his kids, and we didn't know what to call it. I kept saying like chef salt, and I kept saying like, as long as it's like true sea salt. And then finally he was like, what if we called it True Salt?
Great name.
And I thought, there's no way that's going to be available.
Yeah.
And then we, through our IP attorney, we found out that it was. And then that vision of that blue and the ocean and the sand. So once we had the basis of that, I went to some friends in the Valley and said, hey, I've got salt. I had like 2 little sandwich bags with blue tape, number 1, number 2. So I'd go out to chefs and I'm like, try this. Like, what are we doing? I'm like, it's kind of a cupping for salt.
Okay.
So they try the first one. Oh, okay, that's really good. It's clean. It's briny. Tastes good. Now try this one. And they would try it, and they'd get this really kind of like lemony, like, wow, like that's really strong and salty. So yeah, that's Morton's. And it's got chemicals in it. Look at the back. It's yellow prussiate soda, which is EB505. It's a chemical. They bleach it. And then they're like, okay, this is cool, but how much is it?
It's a cost, yeah.
And I said, well, how much are you paying for Morton's? $32 a case. I'm like, we're $28. And literally, that
was it.
Kelly and I would laugh because I could go to any account and I had like a 99.6% close rate.
Yeah.
And the only reason why it wasn't 100% is because there were some restaurants that were using very inexpensive iodized 50-pound bags of salt that you could get for like $8.
So you obviously have contacts in the restaurant business. You've started this salt company. You go out to your initial contacts first and foremost. Every business when it starts has its struggles. It could be years, it could be months, it could be whatever it is until there's really that point of takeoff. What do you think is one of the feature moments for you of, say, an account or an event that had happened where you're like, okay, this is serious?
Serious in the sense of growth, or that it was going to work?
Yeah, both.
Wow. We started, so we had a lot of initial, we started 3 months before COVID.
Mm-hmm. Good timing.
And we were, here's the salt for restaurateurs.
Right.
But so to answer that question is the culinary team and the purchasing directors liked the product. Everybody that tasted the product, the comments were, wow, this is what salt's supposed to taste like. And it was interesting because I thought, what's the difference in salts and taste? And then we started to get some pretty good accounts just within the first 3 months.
Right.
So I would say that before COVID, our big aha was True Food Kitchen. So I went to the corporate office, and the chef's like, this is effing great. He's like, but dude, my customers, I don't know if they care about the salt and how, because that's where the price came up.
Right.
And when I told him how much it was, he was like, oh, we're on board. We're in.
How does one get into True Food Kitchens? You just walk through the front door, or do you know somebody?
The culinary director was an old friend.
Yeah.
So and that's part of my my legacy of having a lot of relationships in the hospitality business.
So let's talk about your legacy. You went to ASU?
I did.
Okay. And then what was ASU like back then? Like what was the atmosphere as far as like the restaurants, the hospitality? I mean, was this something that you were into at a younger age, or was it something you had no idea you'd be owning restaurants and working in hotels?
I had no clue. I moved from Northern California to Arizona, followed my older brother, and went to ASU and barely made it, right? I mean, I really didn't like being told what to do and the educational side of it, but I knew that I had to, nobody in my family had a degree.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my mom raised 4 kids, and it was really difficult for her. So we all kind of just, after high school, everybody just scattered and kind of did their own thing. So ASU back then was amazing.
Yeah.
It was super cool. It was probably, and I didn't know this at the time, but I grew up in Northern California, so Chico State was always #1 party school. ASU was number 2.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a big partier, but that atmosphere of being in this area and the climate, and I mean, people were super friendly.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. And then my thought was, I'm going to get a business degree, and I loved real estate. I was infatuated with it. That's almost like a separate story, because even before I got married, I was buying rental properties while I was working in the hotel business, fixing them up on the side, and that was kind of, I've always had side gigs, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the short answer.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So what was your first, let's just say, hospitality job?
I was a bartender at the Phoenician.
Okay.
So it was my last semester at ASU. We had a nightclub, so I would work the lobby bar and the nightclub.
Yeah.
Back when it was open.
Did you get the bug at that point, or you just figured, that's a job?
I was graduating. I had no clue what I was going to do, and the director of food and beverage at the time said, "Hey, with your personality, would you want to be a sommelier upstairs?" And I said, "What is that?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "It's our wine team."
Yeah.
And I thought that could be really interesting. So I met with the group, and at the time I didn't know anything about wine. But what was interesting, the educational process of the Phoenician back then was so amazing.
Really?
I mean, you learned everything about service and beverage and food, and I was overwhelmed. And I was overwhelmed in a positive way to understand that it wasn't the glamour of being at the Phoenician, it was how serious they took the business.
Yeah.
And I was really intrigued with that. So it took me a year. I was a wine captain and then became a sommelier, and I essentially got paid. Back then we had tuxedos and a Tostavan, and I'm walking on the floor and there's three of us, and we're selling wine.
Wow!
Right? I mean, it was super cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many like side stories to that.
Yeah, and later on down the road, you created a wine app.
I did, yeah. So I was Phoenician for a while. I have business ADD, where I can do things for 1 or 2 years, or probably 2 to 3 years, and then I got to move on. So I was a sommelier. Then went to the Arizona Biltmore for 2 years as a department manager, came back to the Phoenician, worked my way up to director of food and beverage. 4 seasons, reached out to me, became the director of food and beverage there, was one of the first from the outside to kind of take a planning committee position.
Yeah.
And then during that time, I was obviously married my high school girlfriend who I met here, and we had young daughters. And I came home, and Kelly said, "Hey, you need to go talk to Grace." And I said, "Oh, shoot, what's going on? Is she okay?" "Yep." She won't tell me what's going on. So I go in and I say, "Sweetie, what's going on?" And she was probably, I don't know, like first grade or something, right? They were 6 and 4. And she said, "Papa, you said you were going to come to my event at the school," and she's just crying. I walk out, and Kelly's like, "What's going on?" And I told her, and she's like, "Well, she doesn't know. She doesn't understand." I said, "No." I said, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I said, I want to raise my kids.
Right.
I want to be there. And that put me on this track to try to think out of the box, because I've got this comfortable job. I'm the director of food and beverage for a luxury 5-star hotel was my whole background. And I thought, and I've always, my father at the time, who never worked for anybody else, was like, "What are you waiting for?
Do your own thing."
Yeah. And he's like, "Just pull the plug."
And that's when you started the restaurants?
That's when I started Wine PhD.
Wine PhD.
Yeah, so okay. I had this idea of taking the catering wine list and making it digital, and the guys that did that for me, because then we kind of started leasing it back. I brought in a college roommate to kind of help me with the project. The tech team that we hired to do that, iPhone hadn't been out yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, what year is this?
06? When did the phone come out? 7?
Yeah, I mean, this is so new.
I think it was 7. So then the iPhone comes out, and I tell the guys, "Hey, that thing called the application?" They're like, "Yeah, it's called an app." I'm like, "Great, I want to do it. I have this idea to do this digital wine list."
Wow.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, Josh." It was 3 guys from ASU working out of their garage.
Oh my God.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, Josh is iOS certified." I'm like, "Okay, I don't know what that is, but can you do it?"
Whatever. Yeah.
So invested my own money, cashed out some 401ks, and built this really cool app that was crazy popular.
And what happened with it?
It had a 4-year run. My business partner at the time, who was my college roommate, we kind of just wrote it out, and we saw the incoming. But we did very well. We were doing 30 to 40,000 downloads a month. Back then, they were paying you.
Dang.
The Apple guys would fly out. Like we were, I still have some of these relics as far as newspapers, but it'd be like top wine apps of the summer, and it'd be like Wine PhD, right? It was crazy.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my that was my enlightenment into tech.
So then you kind of cash out of that and then start the restaurants?
Yeah, I made some money trying to figure out what I wanted to do after that. Invested into a restaurant at the Scottsdale Core with a business partner.
It was fun, but not profitable.
Quickly realized that I just didn't want to go back into the restaurant business.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I would like it from that side. As a group, we opened up another restaurant, opportunity come up in Greyhawk, and it's really tough.
Yeah.
And from that side, it's really, really hard.
What is tough? Like, what are some of the things that you remember, like, are the top 3 tough things that you're just like, I don't want to deal with that ever again?
Probably just the ability to stay busy enough to be profitable, right? You're always chasing. When you think you got enough money and then summer comes,
yeah,
and no matter how much money you have in the bank and you see that literally evaporate,
yeah,
there's a certain type of anxiety that you just don't forget.
And there's really no amount of marketing you feel or anything that can really help for that, right?
There's not. And it's it's almost the fallacy of, you see, I always tell people, go look at how many 5-star or maybe 4.2-star Yelp reviewed restaurants and how many of those go out of business every year.
Yeah.
So the thing that I've always said is I've seen the smartest guys in the restaurant business fail, and I've seen the not so smart guys do well. And that, to me, I interpreted that as those are really difficult odds. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to be, I knew long term that that's something that wasn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
So then the consulting started, and that was pretty interesting. I had to, cutting the corporate, paycheck
right.
was really difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So having a wife and 2 young girls, so you're thrust into this world of you got to make it.
You got to go.
And at the time, my wife had a really good job with Ralph Lauren. She was doing merchandising in stores.
Yeah.
And through Jones Apparel, and she had gotten laid off in one of the downturns. And I said, you know what? We're gonna be fine.
And you've had one wife?
That's it.
How long have you been married?
Oh my gosh. 27.
So a lot of years.
Yeah.
A few decades.
I don't think I'm that old, but.
Yeah.
So yeah, we dated. I was 19, she was 17. We dated for almost 7 years.
Okay.
And then we've been married. So.
And you have 2 kids, right? 2 daughters.
2 daughters. Yeah.
Yeah. So so the restaurants, and then basically you start consulting. You got to go out and kill so that you can bring home food to the family, right? And so you're just hustling, doing this sort of thing, and then you do this burger deal, which is a really interesting story. I didn't even know that, with knowing you over the years, that you had ended up giving it to another group and creating a deal. And I'm sure that monetarily had helped you, and then you're kind of like going, okay, what am I going to do next besides just consulting? And then the salt idea comes into you. Now you've created this salt brand.
Yes.
And this is still up and running, and it's obviously profitable and doing well.
Crazy busy. I could write a book on, starting being a founder in business is difficult.
Yeah.
But it's you get so much joy out of it.
Right.
So my DNA is I can't, there was always this juxtaposition of me being in corporate America and having somebody say, you got to do this. I'm like, and I wouldn't tell anybody, but I would just go do something else. But always, everything that I did was always done at a level because I had amazing relationships with the people in the workforce.
Yeah.
The thing that I value and cherish the most were those relationships. And to this day, I still go to the Phoenician. I see the afternoon tea girls. They give me a hug. They're like, we miss you. I'm like, gosh, it's been 15 years. That's so heartwarming.
That's awesome.
Funny story. I took Kelly and the girls to Paris, and the Uber pulls up. Right, and this is a couple of weeks ago, and I'm loading the stuff out, and this guy walks out of the car, and I said, Carlos. And he's like, Mr. Pierce.
Oh, my God.
And I said, oh, my gosh. I said, Four Seasons or Phoenician? He's like, Four Seasons. He's like, I was room service server.
That's crazy.
And I said, oh, my gosh, that's right. And he said, and the girls came out, and he's like, I know your dad. We work together. And he said, your dad was the best boss we've ever had. And I literally get goosebumps because, and I'm not saying that to boast, but that was my mission.
Well, you should boast if that's,
That to me, it was, to this day, those relationships and how you treat people, I think is
100%
super important.
So do you feel that those sorts of things, you know what, let me rephrase this question. we're now in a situation, and full transparency, I'm in a business with Brian, and it's called Sinatra, and it's an application for hospitality. So with all this background and experience, I mean, was Sinatra something that you thought you were gonna, kind of go like during True Salt, something that you wanted to create at the time, or is it just something that had kind of hit you because you met this guy named Adam and you just saw the talent there?
It started before. When I owned my restaurants, the idea came to me when we opened a restaurant at the Scottsdale Quarter, and you write a check for the beer, wine, and spirit, and it's a pretty big check. And then, you start rolling, and time goes on, and some of the stuff sells and some of it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I went to my distributors, and I said, hey, guys, and asked them the question, why did you sell me what you sold me? Well, I said, just be honest. Well, we have to. I mean, we were selling the items that it's the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I get it. But don't you have any analytics that can help me to buy what is consumed? And they said, well, we can tell you what we sell, but we don't know what the other distributors sell. And I thought, okay. And then again, it's this preparation meets opportunity. I thought, gosh, I should solve for that. So Wine PhD had wind down. It had been about almost 3.5 years. And I thought, well, I'm just going to call up, my tech guys and see if I can develop this, right? And it's 2012. And the guys that had done Wine PhD went on to do Jason Giammi, Tiger Woods, and they created Shot Zoom, and they retired.
No.
Literally, they're like 28. They sold out.
Peace out.
Right?
Yeah.
Great guys, beautiful Christian. I mean, what happened to them was perfect. So hired a bunch of guys. They're like, call these guys. A couple years go by, a lot of money I put in, and I got nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
Right? And I thought, I don't have those resources to continue failing.
Can't keep bleeding.
So I just, the consulting thing kind of carried on, and then obviously this True Salt thing came, and I had no idea. I didn't know. I laugh because I'm one of the things I always say is I'm the most humble, ignorant person out there, right? I always say you don't know what you don't know, and somebody said, oh, it's cool that you started a CPG company. I said, oh no, I just have a sea salt company. And they're like, no, it's a consumer product good. I said, okay. I get, I'm a restaurant guy. I guess I do. So yeah, I mean, the True Salt trajectory and what's happening, and there's been a lot of things in the market that have caused us to become very popular. Since we've started, Morton's has had allocation periods where they didn't have salt in the market, so that would push our brand forward. I think what Kelly's vision and the beauty of the packaging, right? It was super impactful, right? And that's all part of that CPG and how you position yourself. So, and then the tragedy of COVID coming and basically almost killing the company.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember calling him during COVID, and I said, dude, we got I remember the number, it's $1,048. I go, that's all we have left in the bank.
Oh my God.
And he's like, do you think we're going to make it? I said, let's just keep fighting. I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we kind of shifted, and we started, we had heard, a friend of a friend's had called this buyer from Amy's Kitchen, which is a retail, they actually do packaged goods, and you see all their product. Amy's Organic, they do canned food. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah, soups and all that stuff, Whole Foods. Right.
So I literally stalked the buyer, and she eventually started buying salt from us, which really kind of saved us. And it's one of these stories you hear about this.
Yeah.
So she said, she picked up the phone. She's like, hi, Brian. I said, hey. She goes, here's the deal. I'm leaving to go visit my college roommate. And this is kind of COVID had faded. And if you promise not to call me for 2 days, I promise when I get back, I'll follow up with the chefs to see where they're at with the salt. That was a Friday. So Saturday, the phone rings. Hey, Brian. I said, Rebecca, I didn't call you. She goes, I know. Funny story. I'm here with my friend. We're going to go on this hike. She's like, oh, I'm going to make us this amazing avocado toast. By the way, you got to try this salt. And it was a bag of True Salt.
You got to be kidding
that
me.
She had purchased somewhere up in the Seattle area.
Oh, my God.
And she said, this is good karma.
This is great.
So she comes back in town and she's like, okay, we're going to, we do 2 sources. One's going away. We're going to start using your sea salt. I said, great. I mean, at the time you have to understand, I think we would bring up a load, which is 43,000 pounds, which is a full semi truck. And that would last us probably, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months.
Okay.
So long.
Yeah.
And she's like, so 43,000 pounds. She goes, okay, we're going to do a blanket purchase order and we're going to need about 400,000 pounds. And I'm like, she's like, Brian, are you there? I said, yeah. She goes, is that okay? I said, yeah, no problem. Got it.
And you had no fucking clue how you're going to deliver it?
I remember hanging up and I told Kelly, he's like, what did you say? I said we could do it.
Yeah.
He's like, how the fuck are we going to do it? I said, I don't know. 2 days later, she calls back, hey, I made a mistake. I'm like, oh, fuck, man, we lost it. She goes, it's 700,000 pounds.
Oh, my God.
And literally, Kelly and I are like, dude, let's just do it. We'll figure it out.
Kids, do not give up on your dreams. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, that of lessons that I've always learned, I mean, across the board is I call it persistence without exception.
So that basically saved True Salt's ass.
Saved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are they still a client today?
One of our top customers.
And
they've gone through a lot. The inflation. And during COVID, they crushed it.
Well, dude, a can of soup is like $8 now.
I know.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that really saved us. That put us on. Through their relationship and the referrals that we've got from them, it's been amazing. So our whole ingredient side of the business is massive.
So, okay, so then how does this transpose into now you wanting to do things, for the hospitality industry with this new app that we're developing?
Always been my passion, that whole story of trying to figure out how to get analytics to restaurateurs so they can buy the right thing has never left me. And then, kind of circling back, I'd met some individuals that had started Flippy robots and some other tech, and I thought, this is pretty intriguing, like what's going to happen in the next 10 years in the hospitality sector. So I had actually started, before I had met Adam for Sinatra, I had put a little team together, and I said, I'm gonna just go at this. Mm-hmm. And I'm the last guy that you want leading a company in the sense that, so these poor guys, and they didn't say anything. And Addy, who's been with us since day one, will tell you the stories. He won't because he's just so nice.
Yeah, he's nice.
But if you had to inject him in True Serum, he'd say, oh, yeah, Brian, okay, so for 2 weeks, he's like, okay, we're going to do this. And they're like, okay. And then they would start developing it. And then Brian would come and say, what if we did this? And they're like, okay, we can do that. I just kept switching it, right? I mean, it's just me.
So it was like a hamster just kind of spinning around.
Too many ideas, not focused. I'd met Adam, and I know, as he says, it's interesting set of circumstances, which it was. And then once we connected, it was the perfect team.
Yeah.
Because, his genius and his ability to kind of focus, and it's the yin and the yang, right? It's like, I wouldn't be here with True Salt if it wasn't for Kelly Egan. I mean, he's incredible.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I said, and I think it took him back because I said, he goes, hey, I got your email. What's this list? I said, this is a list of things that I can't do. And he's like, oh, wow. I said, these are the things I don't like to do.
Yeah.
I hate sitting in front of a computer. I can't do this. I can look at a spreadsheet. In food and beverage, we became forensic accountants.
That's great.
So I said, I can dissect it quickly. I said, and he's like, oh, I love doing this. He's like, I love doing analysis.
Perfect.
And it just became, and it wasn't without, you learn about people like any marriage.
That should be a dating site. What I like, what I don't like, and what I like to do, and what I mean, that's great.
This is what I suck at.
Yeah.
And with Adam and I, it was just, we synced and we just kind of went on this path. And, even to this day, he's just so hyper focused, and he's got, energy of the sun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you can't stop him. So there's a lot, it's almost a whole separate, discussion point, and I know you had him on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so much positive energy. The thing I'll say in closing on that is there's a lot of synergy between, so with True Salt, we have national presence. We ship out, a few million pounds a month now.
Right.
But our relationships are relationships of the future that we'll have that we could introduce Sinatra.
Yeah.
So those True Food Kitchen at a corporate level, we just picked up Cava nationally. They're an amazing company. Sugar Foods is, without exception, one of the best companies that I've had engagement and to work with. I mean, incredible.
What are the flavors of True Salt that you have?
It's primarily just sea salt.
Yeah.
So we have different grain. Yeah. We have kosher grain is all of our salt is kosher.
Yep.
Fine is really meant for like pasta water and salad dressings,
Yeah.
and then for baking, and then we've got our workhorse, which is True Salt Kosher.
Yep.
That's kind of the Morton's equivalent, but better.
Yeah.
No additives.
But you flavored some of these.
We have one smoked.
Smoked. That's the one smoked. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Would you rather be on a cruise or a jungle expedition?
Cruise. I hate mosquitoes.
Yeah. So does my wife.
Yeah.
Sharks or cheetahs?
Cheetahs. I hate water.
What would you rather be eaten by, a shark or a cheetah?
Neither. I guess I'd rather fall into a black hole quicker.
Okay, that works. Would you rather go to church or go to a food event?
Food event?
Strike you down.
Wow.
Oh,
Man.
God. Last but not least, Bigfoot or aliens?
Oh, come on. Aliens. I'm all of that.
I only ask that question so I can play that button every podcast. So, no, that's great. So, okay, what's some, if people want to find you, if that's even a thing, I mean, does True Salt even advertise? I mean, you guys are just straight to the consumer, right? But if there's restaurants listening here that don't use you, they can find you how?
So, yeah, I mean, TrueSalt.com.
Okay.
We come up. Brian at TrueSaltCo.com. So our being a hospitality guy at heart, I give our salt out to everybody.
Yep.
And then because they once they taste it, they love it.
Yeah.
And they know that it's a better price point. So again, our mission with all that we do, be it True Salt or Sinatra, is to positively influence that world, and that really is kind of my thesis.
So if you're listening to this podcast, you want a sample of True Salt, just hit me up and we will get it out to you.
Absolutely.
Does that work?
Yeah.
All right. That's awesome. Thank you, Brian, for
Thank
coming
you.
and hanging out. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the latest episode of On the DELO. Got some more great guests coming up, and hope you've enjoyed some of the past guests. We just had press coffee last week, which was awesome, and we're drinking coffee. I don't know if it's press or not, but we'll just say it is. Please follow me at I Am the DELO. Check me out on Instagram, and again, until next time, peace out.